Watching F5. We are at GovWare 2023 in Singapore. I have the fortune of being joined by Mo. Mo, can I get you to introduce yourself?
Hey Mo, I'm responsible for all the system engineers and SAs in APCJ. I'm based in Sydney, Australia.
Okay, fantastic. And Mo, you were actually up here for GovWare to be on a panel. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that panel and what you guys were talking about?
Yeah, it was a health care panel. Basically, we had a lot of the CISOs responsible for all the healthcares in not necessarily just in Singapore, but across ASEAN. And so, it's good to catch up with some of the CISOs, and also we had a number of key partners like Mandiant and other key partners. They also had the opportunity to present. But I unfortunately was part of the panel to talk about some of the emerging threat landscapes.
Gotcha.
And so it's a good experience for me to hear directly from the forum, on the challenges they're having.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we can go over a couple of those challenges that they're talking about.
Yeah, look, I think healthcare will be heavily regulated. It's like the financial markets. And so they don't have as much budget as normally as the financial customers do. Currently, a survey was done in the room yesterday, and they're saying that 5 to 10% of the IT budget is actually spent on cybersecurity, which is not a lot compared to the other industries.
Yeah.
So from that, and also they have a lot of legacy hardware, IoT devices that are either connected or disconnected, which run very old, compromised OS, etc. Yeah. And so they're having to, figure out how to best balance that budget versus what's so important in terms of security. For example, they've got hardware like switches sitting in there, end of support, etc. How do you protect against that type of exposure, etc. So yeah, they have a number of challenges, budgets, old technology, very old hardware, and if they don't do something and find more budgets and come up with a good way to meet the regulations, people's lives are probably going to be exposed. Not so much about the data, but if someone targets the IoT device, it could,
Would you say that 5 to 10%, was that including the people resources as well, or just CapEx, OpEx for gear?
Yeah, it's everything. It's not a lot.
Yeah. That's interesting too, because I haven't heard of cybersecurity professionals' wages decreasing. I think they're increasing right now.
Well, I think the reason for the panel, this is the first year that they have that healthcare panel in there, is to bring that exposure, because those guys need to go to the board to ask for budgets, and I think it's a sign that more money will be provided to the healthcare industry to invest in cybersecurity, definitely.
And what kind of threats do you think, or were they talking about specific threats that they're encountering?
Yeah, look, I think they mentioned a couple, right? So, which I think they're not no different from the normal other industry threats. The number one threat still is phishing, right? Phishing is how you get malware into your systems. And they have a problem in there. I don't think they're, and also they're opening up their applications to third parties, right? And obviously they're concerned, they have some concerns around that. How do you protect against that type of threats? They don't see those threats yet, but 6 years ago in Singapore, someone actually came in, because Singapore does keep all the records centrally, which is bleeding edge, right? 6-7 years ago. Yeah. Someone actually managed to get in and take all those records out.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I guess it's super important now that how do you actually, every time you add a new system, and how do you actually protect against that? Yeah. I think, I've talked a couple of things. One is, because they expose their applications via APIs to third parties like insurance companies, private clinics, etc. There's a real possibility that supply chain attacks are real, and we talked about that, saying, look, if someone comes in, compromises the insurance company system, their central database that the government sees legitimate API calls, right? And how do you protect against that? Because everyone's coming to you and asking you to spend money everywhere, and you don't have enough budget. You got to look at the risk-based, philosophy and zoom in. And what's the most important thing in your assets? It's your application and your data, right? You must focus and spend all your savings there. Not saving, but your budgets. And very few people, like if you look at the supply chain problem, we zoomed into it. It's now part of the OWASP top 10 list, right? It's number 10 in the API OWASP list, and very hard to solve. And I'm just talking to some of our architects here in Singapore, and they figured a way to actually use our strength. Our strength with big IP is a full proxy. Normally the WAFs that you find from Impervers, etc., they only look at the request side. They don't look at the response side. But when you have a flexibility with iRules, and you can actually turn that around and start to also inspect the responses. So I didn't actually talk about that because it's not let's talk about problems. But I just want to make that awareness about, hey, okay, if you have supply chain problems, you're probably not aware that you probably are losing data because of that.
Yeah, and what I could say too, a little bit earlier on, talking to Joko and talking to Darren about some of the conversations that they're having in the booth, specifically I think ties into that too, in that Joko was talking about app-to-app connectivity, which comes back to the API, and then comes back, or API security, and also when we talk about multi-cloud networking, F5 actually specifically calls it out as secure multi-cloud networking. It's just not about the connectivity, but that connectivity serves the purpose, especially in cloud. It's not necessarily users, a lot of APIs, microservices. So how do you secure that in between the supply chain of that, people hopping around and things that are feeding the APIs. So, that kind of, your panel kind of maps into, hopefully we can get those folks to come by the booth and they can talk to Darren.
Yeah, no, absolutely, great points. Like how you describe this secure multi-cloud networking. Some people are calling it app-to-app fabric, right? It's a fabric. It's like when Cisco moved across and made their network a fabric, right? ACI, etc. Apps need to have that type of underlying fabric, which is really important for the CISOs. When you have a application fabric in your network, guess what? You have a distributed central way to distribute policies, which is a challenge for a lot of CISOs, right? Because they have 10, 20 vendors existing, and now they have to figure out, okay, I have a CV, how do I actually push a policy consistently across this multi-cloud environment and my private data centers to the clinics, etc. With an app-to-app fabric, you're making their jobs a lot easier now, especially being the last line of defense. The application where it sits is actually the core, goal. It's your goal. You have to protect that, right? And F5 sits at that defense layer, right? If you can help CISOs, with less complicated way to deploy security policies in real time, consistently, I think that will actually go a long way. And if I can execute on that, I think we're working towards helping out, because malware. One of the other topics that we talked about, it's becoming easier. Last night I was dinner with the SCs, the Singapore SCs invited me to dinner. We talked about, and they were talking about this old Cisco hardware being vulnerable to a particular CV. I said, I can write you a malware right now. So I got my phone out, went to bard.google.com, and I said, okay, hey, help me write a malware for this CV.
Yeah.
30 seconds later, I've had the malware.
Easy as that.
Easy as that. And so now you're taking that hacker community from being very few people, maybe state actors or very, very, very smart security hackers, etc., and maybe state actors. You expanded that to maybe 1 billion people now. Instead of being 100, 200 people who are very good, you've made the whole 1 billion people really good at writing malware, right? So, which means that, a lot more people will come back and try to say, hey, give me some money, I'm going to lock your data down unless you give me some money, right? And this is a real problem, right? One is that. And the second problem that you have for people is brand reputation. If someone, in banks it's important because, you can destroy a bank. In the health community, it's actually owned by the government sometimes, right? It's ministers and governments and whatever, this is, this will destroy them in power, if they don't find a way to, resolve that. Again, it comes back humans, policies, procedures, etc. If we enable the tools to be consumed easier, people will use those. If we make the tools harder and we enforce, I just got a new phone, Android phone, just a couple of days ago. There's a default setting on where every time I look at my Outlook calendar, I have to log on. Every time I go to my Teams, I have to log on, whatever, right? So it's, I stopped using my VPN, because it's another layer of security. It became harder to do things, right? If you're going to do that and lock down everything, no one's going to use it. It's going to slow down productivity. But if you make it easier for people, then I turn on single sign-on with my phone so I can have my work profile and business profile as single, that solved the problem, right? So that's, I think this app-to-app fabric, going back to app-to-app fabric, single policy will help solve that. So long answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. 1.2 is I'm going to point out something one of my teammates, Aubrey King, talks about with generative AI. When you're talking about malware there and being able to generate the malware code really quickly, he had me thinking about, he's talked about this a couple times, but thinking about the actual delivery of that payload. And sometimes the folks, the bad actors, are not English as their first language. They can now use something like ChatGPT to craft a very good, well-written email as well to get that in there. So yeah, it's getting easier for everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it. You can't tell who actually wrote this. It's very hard to say, pinpoint,
It could be, you could tell ChatGPT to write it in the style of Shakespeare or your favorite author, and they'll pick up on colloquialisms as well. So yeah, very crazy times right now.
Yeah, exactly. Generative AI makes things harder for everyone in this cybersecurity field.
Absolutely. All right, well, things to watch out for. Thanks a lot, Mo, for joining me today. Again, we've got a lot of content around GovWare 2023. Specific topics like that, though. That was, specific CISOs, healthcare in this region. And so if that's of interest to you, you're going to want to check out all the content that we have. And some of those conversations that I had with Joko and Darren, those will be videos as well that I was referring to with Mo there. So thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you hit like, subscribe to follow along for more content, and otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. Bye now.